Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Midday CX Spark, where we actually focus in on, for 15 minutes, some nuggets and insight on being able to improve the customer experience. And we're talking contact center, yes, of course, because it's one of my primary areas of emphasis and focus. But we look at really experience from a lot of different perspectives. We talk about in the customer experience world, front office, back office, all those people can impact the customer experience that are part of that entire customer journey. And with me today, I have one of our senior contributors at the Customer Service Weekly, which Customer Service Weekly is powered by the PACE Association, and you can get information at customerserviceweekly.org if you didn't find us through there. And Diane Magers, one of my longtime friends and one of my favorite people in the world, is here with us. Diane, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much, Jim. I'm so pleased to be here and be part of your Spark for the day.
Oh, yes, thank you. And so for us, we want to do these on a regular basis. Every single Tuesday at 1:05 is when we start broadcasting Eastern time. Then we also take these and we make them available at customerserviceweekly.org, which again is powered by PACE. But Diane, you actually shared with me some things that to me rang true in so many different ways in regards to what you call the customer experience management ecosystem. And there's three things
Yeah,
we talk about today. If you could, maybe it's probably best to kind of talk about what you mean when you even refer to customer experience management ecosystem.
yeah, absolutely. Let's define that first, because I think that's important. We're seeing now when we think about experience, many organizations have kind of drafted what they think is really the experience they're providing, right? They've defined it, they're trying to understand it. What we're seeing organizations move toward now, especially with all the changes that are happening, is this engagement, right? How do we really engage people to have conversations with us, to be engaged with our product development, to innovate, to truly listen and have that two-way conversation, not just be observers of that experience. So that's what I mean by the ecosystem. The other thing that I talk about with ecosystem is thinking about not only your customers, but your employee experience. And I don't mean discretionary effort to serve the customer better. I mean, what's the experience of an employee being a customer of the brand? What is their day-to-day like? How are they feeling about the brand? What are they doing? How are you fixing those pain points? And then the larger scope of that even is beyond that. Now, as brands have to start to work together, like your grocery store and the delivery person, now we're seeing is bigger brand to brand coordination of those experiences. So it's become a lot more than it used to be.
Oh, so you've been talking a little bit about the emphasis and the changes that have taken place, and prior to COVID, it being important, but
Yeah.
now it's been emphasized. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, so we all know that changes to how we interact with brands and technology and digital, and we're changing beforehand in a very rapid pace. We were all trying to play catch up. Now with COVID, not only is that continuing to change and we're having to accelerate a lot of those things, but the needs have changed. And so today's session, we wanted to call kind of this needs pivot. We realized as human beings that we had all these things that were happening and we were trying to keep up and our needs were changing. Well, now thinking about going online, thinking about how we choose brands and who we want to be partnered with. Do we trust those brands? Are they making good decisions through COVID? All of those things are really creating this pivot in needs. The other needs that we see are along the psychological, sociological realm as well. Thinking about, your employees at home, or if you are a leader, what are you doing to really drive purpose within your organization? So the needs of brands have changed, the needs of your employees have changed, and the needs of customers are changing, from what they need emotionally, from a trust perspective, to basic safety and financial management and all the things that we know are going to be critical here in the next few months. They're looking to brands to help really guide them. And they're looking for brands that can understand where they are from an emotional, social, economic standpoint and provide things that are meaningful to them, particularly at this time. So it's already started. We're just seeing a ramp up.
Yeah, and right now, when you start looking at some of the reports that are coming out, there's a couple things that are happening in society as a whole, and then also in the customer contact centers that are delivering this experience more and more. And so for me, It's been very interesting when you start looking at the importance of the contact center pre-COVID. We kind of knew it was important. There was still a lot of organizations talking about it being the cost center and things like that, to now becoming a vital part of the operation. I mean, the
Yeah.
importance of the contact center has elevated so fast. How has that contributed to all this?
Oh, because all of us are at this heightened sense of awareness, and the criticality of what we're dealing with has become really forefront to us. So the times where we needed a critical issue resolved, or emotionally we need to just have that conversation with a human being, we're seeing a lot more of that into play. As a matter of fact, studies you said just came out, we're finding that 75% of 75% of customers want a more human connection now, not less, not digital. They want more human connection. So it's one of those things we have to be aware of when we think about how we're defining and designing those experiences, and having those conversations and equipping our people and our brands to understand they're dealing with individuals that are all across the spectrum now. Heightened emotions, heightened sense of urgency, those things have to be taken into account. And that's why when we say pivoting needs, we've got to understand that at an individual level. The personalization used to be about, hey, I know exactly what you looked at on this website and can recommend something. Now it's this type of person, and they're calling in and they're in distress. What are they looking for, and how can we help them? It's become much more prominent than it had been. And you were mentioning something about employee engagement and experience. I think you should share a little bit about that too. What's happening on the employee side?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of reports that have come out associated with employee engagement that it hit an all-time low. Gallup comes out with a regular report on their measurements associated with employee engagement, and that, I mean, unheard of numbers. And so for me, when you start talking about the COVID and the crisis, I mean, everybody was talking about, hey, we're in this together, and that was the message around everything. And part of it was us just being able to figure things out, to put things in place. So to see what it was going to be like, as some of the, um, let's just say, the changes and the dust settles. And
Yeah.
a lot of people started realizing that, this is going to be this way for a little while, and started realizing that their needs are not being met. It's what you were talking about.
Yeah,
That's just,
exactly.
that was one thing. And then talking to a couple of people who are in the contact center industry, they said they're now starting to see this uptick in spike in employee turnover, because they're realizing that, at least within their organization, they're having a difficult time being able to function and have that well-being. They're like, you know what, this just isn't for me, and they're leaving.
Yes, yes. Well, I think it's no different than in experience. We always talk about you got to get the basics right. You got to take care of those functional needs. People have to have a place to work. They have to be connected, right? We did a great job kind of getting to remote work, but what we're facing now is what a lot of brands aren't really comfortable with, and leaders have to begin to understand at a deeper level, and that's the emotional part of how you engage an employee. We had started to see, even before this, psychologists, anthropologists, the behavioral sciences, neuroscience, even coming into play in brands, because they began to realize this way before COVID. It's all that more important now, because I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to even in the last few months, Jim, that have realize that their priorities have changed and their needs have changed, from brands and the clothes they used to buy, to sustainability and economic strife, and how they're going to deal with others in society and their values. Everything's come into question. And we have to, as brands, really realize those shifts that not just customers, but our employees are going through in their own personal lives.
Well, and so we're talking about this, customer experience ecosystem management, and you talked about a lot of these, process and customer journey things. And I think too many times we kind of disassociate humanity from those elements, because, and I had this conversation with somebody the other day, there's a very big difference between, managing processes and managing, practices and managing workflows and managing, all of that. I said, but if you try to manage people, that's where you have a problem. What you do is you have all these systems,
Good luck.
try to lead people with it, right?
Yeah, I don't know how many people know this, but I started my life as a clinical psychologist. And human behavior, there's, you can take a guess, right? But we do know, I mean, you think about your own experiences when you have experiences with brands. Just think about what people are doing and how they're feeling and what they're thinking about as they go through an experience with you. It's just, it just blows my mind sometimes. I think there's this almost like when you go to the airport and you have to go through security, when people walk into their building or they check in for work, so to speak, that they just completely lose the fact that you're dealing with a human being, whether you're building else. The way that I kind of put it too, Jim, sometimes a way to think about it is it's about the human life and how your brand fits into it. It is not about your own internal processes and workflows. Yes, they're important, but you've got to realize where that customer and or employee needs you to be. What do they need from you? Because that's where you're going to build that engagement and the ability for you to earn the right to continue to do business with them or support them. Even if you're a brand and a nonprofit, think about your donors. They're going to look to brands today who are making decisions around that and not about their dollar. So that's the pivot. The other pivot we're seeing with brands is that what do they need to be doing differently?
Most definitely. I think for me, that's one of the things that I've been, to me, I just love working with you because it's getting into that humanity side. And that's been part of my own, personal and professional journey, becoming certified in emotional intelligence and getting a better understanding of this whole leading of the experience, not so much
Yes.
managing the experience because there's people involved on both sides.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I often ask people to think about, if you were the CEO, what would you do differently in the brand? And I can tell you, I never hear them say anything about process or workflows or managing anything. What they talk about is the purpose and sustainability. If I was the CEO of whatever company you name the brand, they talk about how they would treat their customers and what they would do differently. It's just ironic to me that brands still think about those things as management and tactics, which again have to be in place, but their customers are thinking about how they live and breathe as a brand and how they treat their customers. That's what's most important. That's what comes to mind.
And most definitely, and that's the whole. And I think you kind of hit with a couple of those key words. That's the sustainability piece. Well, then you can also flip that a little bit further and say, well, that means that I am adapting and pivoting, better than my competitors. I am, retaining, the top talent. I'm doing all of these things that are those differentiating factors, and it gets very complex. When you're dealing with human beings, it is not simple, nor will you ever find perfection.
No, that's just it. Because you never please everybody, as my mom used to say. I think this is a little bit of holding the mirror up to organizations too. I've talked to several leaders in the space, big organizations, and one of the things that they've recognized about their brand is that they never thought they could do the things they've done in the last, 6 months, 8 months. They didn't know they could be that agile. They didn't know they could be that collaborative, and they certainly didn't know they could be that emotionally driven to truly understand what's happening. All the employee surveys, all that stuff. Why weren't you doing that before? That's what they ask themselves. Why weren't we paying attention to this before? It just had never come to light like it had at this point. So I think what they're realizing is that their organizational competencies and capabilities that they thought they wanted to build, collaboration, innovation, agility, are there. They just hadn't had an urgent way for that to happen. They were so focused on, this quarter and what needs to happen in their projects. They were kind of taken by surprise. But the good part of that is they're pivoting now to say, we can do that. We just need to learn things differently. And one of those is, how are we going to be there for customers and employees in a different way than we were before, which is great to see. So
Oh,
they're asking the questions.
yeah. I mean, and that's where that's a great start. So now that we are seeing that this is going to be lasting for a while, and this is part of our new reality, let's make them stick. So Diane, thanks again for joining us on today's Customer Experience Midday Spark for the customerserviceweekly.org, powered by Pace, and your senior contributor. So we'll be seeing you again, and we thank you very much.
My pleasure. Everybody have a wonderful day.